In today's video, we're going to chat through some of the things that SGC have implemented that have helped them win a lot of love within the hobby over the last couple of weeks, couple of months, and why they're probably a very tangible offering now within the market and why you should be excited to have them doing really well, because it means we're going to start getting more value from some of these other grading companies moving forward. Now, there's a few things to talk through here, like what have they changed in terms of their business approach? We'll get to that in a second. We'll also talk through what is it they're actually doing that's better than their competitors, and we'll get to that point as well a little bit later on. Then also, I just want to touch on a few things in where they're lacking and where they can improve moving forward, or what some of the drawbacks are for using them as a business, I should say. Now, all of these things can change, and a lot of people have talked about this topic in recent times, but I just wanted to draw your attention to some of the negative elements as well, because I think that doesn't get spoken about enough, but we'll get to that a little later on. Now, the first thing I want to touch on, as you'll see on the screen now, is that they've sort of upped their game in recent months and actually overtaken Beckett in terms of cards graded on a monthly basis. It's pretty exciting to see them do that, to be honest, because it just shows that they're getting a lot of love from submitters, from customers. And yes, a lot of that is due to the fact that PSA and Beckett had to shut up shop, and SGC and obviously the other graders out there took up some of the slack. But you can see SGC is getting some pretty good growth month on month, because they're doing all the good things right, and I'll get to that point in a second. Now, in terms of some of these numbers, SGC is also way ahead of Beckett on a year-to-date basis as well. I think they're like 140,000 cards ahead of them, which is pretty crazy. I think SGC has only graded like 600,000 cards for the year, so to have a big difference by that amount shows how little BGS has done recently. But the key question here is, okay, what did SGC actually do to make customers start using them so frequently? Now, the easy answer is, well, they didn't do anything, because it was PSA and BGS that shut up shop, which meant some of these other graders had to pick up the work, which is true. But SGC had to do something to win so much work, right? And it's pretty easy to see if you check out their Instagram. Peter, their new CEO, I think he came in, 2 years ago, I want to say. I might be wrong on that. I'm just trying to remember. Should have checked this beforehand. But he came in and started being really proactive in social media, I should say. And I think he took a lot of what Tyler from HGA was trying to do in terms of being very proactive on social media, because as Tyler came in and started doing these things all the time, he started doing this as well. And Peter's always been pretty good at this, but he seemed to step up his game once he saw what Tyler was doing. And that goes to what I've talked about in the past as well. These new graders that are coming in, you think, well, some of you out there might think, well, why would you use them? They're dumb. Why are they there? It's because they bring this minor innovation. Even if they bring the innovation then leave, it has a lasting effect on the existing businesses, which is what SGC is doing, right? Because they're way more transparent on social media. They talk all the time. They tell you what they're up to, what they got wrong, and things like that, which is really good to hear, which I think is probably the biggest thing they changed, right? They came out incredibly transparent. They came out, implemented affordable pricing for grades to get submitted. They didn't try and cash in like some of these other graders did. But then, most importantly, they had turnaround times and they stuck to them. In some instances, they also completed them ahead of time pretty frequently as well. So that's probably the big thing that they actually changed and got going. And that's really exciting. And that also speaks to, some of the things they're doing better than their competitors. And I think the big one is the communication, right? They are probably their best in the business at this at the moment. Now, PSA have gotten better lately as well. But Peter, anytime something happens on social media, as I'll quickly show you now on my screen, you've got things like Peter coming out, and when they've identified an error, I think this was in relation to a Pokemon card they graded that they shouldn't have. It was fake. They came out, made a video literally the day the news broke. It was 2-minute video. They looked into it. They ended up recovering the funds and things like that, or buying the card back of the person, so the person wasn't left out of pocket that bought the card, gave them the money back, so on and so forth, which all the graders do. Okay, so you shouldn't be surprised that they've done that, but it's good that they've come out so quickly on social media and said, hang on, we need to fix these. And that is a game changer for these grading companies, because Beckett, as an example, haven't said a peep up until the last couple of weeks. You haven't heard from them for 12 months, 18 months. PSA is a little bit better, but these guys are doing communication really, really well, as I touched on a little bit earlier. But they're also doing things like this, where they're updating their customers through social media. Again, another minute video from their CEO talking about improvements they're trying to make from an AI perspective, the turnaround times, the pricing. They had a recent video where they also talked about the changes to their authentic labels, because they sat back and listened to their customers' feedback and said, well, actually, I think we need more information on these labels to give our buyers of our slabs on the secondhand market, on the secondary market, not the person submitting the card, more information as to why that card got an authentic label. So now they're doing things like authentic and saying it was trimmed, authentic evidence and touch-up, things like that, which is a really big thing. Some graders already do this, but the fact that they've identified this as an error and then communicate it really quickly to us within the hobby is, again, a huge reason why they're doing so well at the moment. So then they've also done things like this on YouTube, where they started doing interviews with influencers out there. So you can see they've done something here with Neo Cards and Comics, where they talk through, the process in detail, and they go through talking all the cool things that SGC is trying to do and where they want to be moving forward, i.e. they want to be the #1 grading company. that transparency you're getting from them and their owner is crazy. You don't get that from many other graders. And it's really cool because it's not the only time they've done that. They also, well, Peter was also on, I should say, Retro Hoops, where he checked out and did a similar thing. Another interview, spoke about a lot of cool things. So if you haven't seen any of these things, please check them out. But that kind of stuff, you know, is amazing to see, and it's really good from them as a business because not many other of their competitors are doing that so regularly. And that's a huge thing for them. But then the other thing, on top of this communication, they're obviously also doing a really good job with the consistency of their grading. They're doing these head and shoulders above any of their peers. Now, the one thing I do want to touch on this, okay, is that a lot of people are saying, okay, they're the best at it, but just keep in mind they're only getting through 100,000 cards a week. So I'm still the firm believer, and I've said this many times, I think if you give every grader, so PSA, BGS, SGC, HGA, CSG, CGC, you give them all 100,000 cards to grade on a month or in a month, I guarantee you SGC would still be doing really, really well, but I think PSA and BGS, I think their best graders are still better than what's out at SGC. So keep that front of mind when you're thinking about, you know, the consistency of the grading moving forward, because, you know, there's a lot of things to factor in. It's not just, oh, okay, they've graded my card more accurately than what PSA's done. The reason why PSA is probably struggling at the moment is because they're getting through 1 million cards a week, or a month, I should say, which is crazy. So keep that in mind. But if you are going to submit your card right now to SGC, you are probably going to get the most consistent grade out of any business out there, which is a huge win, and it speaks to, you know, the value. They also do some really cool things with, you know, their turnaround times, like I touched on a little bit earlier. They're sticking to their turnaround times. I don't recall the last time I heard somebody submit a card to SGC and it came back later than what was intended. In fact, the majority of comments that I do see from people is the fact that they've got their cards back ahead of the time, ahead of the schedule, which is a huge thing. And I really hope that continues from them as a business. Like, I think we should see PSA and BGS getting better at this moving forward as well, especially PSA now they've opened up their Eastern Distribution Center, or their Eastern Grading Center, I should say. But for right now, SGC is doing, again, this better than anyone else. Nobody else is sticking to their turnaround times. Maybe PSA if you pay for $500 for a card to get it graded or whatever it was up until a few months ago, but you guys get the point. But then the last point on that is also the fact that their grading is still very affordable. Yes, in my opinion, it's still too expensive. I think we should have grades or graders charging what they were charging 12, 18 months ago. I'd very much like to get to that point. But for now, they are very cheap. They stick to their turnaround times. You get your cards graded very accurately, probably more accurately than anywhere else. Like I said, you're getting them turned around within the time frame, if not earlier. Okay, the little bit of a premium that maybe you're paying, it is what it is. It's still really good. So that's sort of it from what they were doing, or what they are doing really, really well. I'm keen to get your thoughts if you think there's anything else that I've missed. In terms of probably where they're lacking, it's more on the resale value, okay? The market still hasn't understood or put a value on SGC over the other two just yet. And I'm very curious to see whether that's going to, you know, remain for the period, or it's going to grow into the foreseeable future. Maybe people are going to value SGC long term. In my opinion, you know, I think the hobby's got a short memory. I've had a few discussions on this with people over however many years, right? The hobby's always got a short memory. So I think, you know, when PSA and BGS do open up again, all the good that SGC has done, is that going to remain when they also grade things on a weekly basis and charge you peanuts to get your card graded? Is that still going to hold strong? That's sort of left to be desired. I think people will flock back to PSA and BGS, and I can't see SGC overtaking either of those in terms of secondary market pricing for the foreseeable future. But anything can change, right? When you keep looking at what SGC is doing, the communication element, the fact that they're so transparent, all the innovation they're trying to bring through the use of AI and improvements to their process that Peter makes videos on, you know, changing their labels, listening to their customers, being really quick to react, because that's probably the most important thing for a business these days, alongside transparency and communication. Being quick to react when something happens within the market is a huge thing. Obviously, there's always this thing called first mover's advantage, right? So if you're the first mover in a market, you're generally going to do really well because none of your competitors can keep up with you, okay? However, it's also good to quickly react, right? Because if your competitors are doing something, it's how quickly you can adapt your existing business process to meet them, match them, and then maybe even one-up them. And SGC at the moment, like I said a little bit earlier, is doing really well in that regard. They're seeing what's happening out in the market and they're adapting. That's a huge thing. So maybe those things are going to be enough, you know, to help them remain strong and be a competitor and push for that number one spot, like Peter's ambition is for the next couple of years, or happen within the next couple of years. I think he's targeting that within the next 2 to 3 years, if I recall. So like I said, they're doing really, really well. I think the key thing they've changed is they've increased communication, they've increased transparency, they've listened to their customers. You know, that's almost all you can hope for in a business in this instance. I'm really excited. I hope they keep going from strength to strength. I'm not one of these guys that, you know, is a hater or a lover of these grading companies. I want them all to succeed, okay? And I want them all to innovate, because the more things, or the more companies that do well, I should say, the more companies that do well, the more value we're going to get as collectors. Like I've explained many times to you all in the past, more competition, the more innovation we have, the more value we get, because they all need to uplift their process and start one-upping each other to try and bring more value to us as collectors, which means at the end of the day, it's better for us, right? More competition, better. So please share your thoughts on any of these things down in the comments below. I hope you liked the video. Thanks for watching. One thing I want to touch on before I do go, though, please let me know if I did miss anything, because I went on a bit of a ramble there, so I always do that. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.